Hello, this is Chuck Ridgway, Automation Technology Manager at Horner. Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday live stream. But not just another Tuesday live stream, a continuation of the Summer of Cscape. All summer long, we're bringing to you great Cscape 10 related topics so you can hit the ground running on July 1st when we release Cscape 10 as a free download on our website. And simultaneous with the release of Cscape 10 is the release of Canvas, a new OCS series featuring a dual-core microprocessor and advanced graphics, and Canvas does require Cscape 10 for programming. However, Cscape 10 has all kinds of great features that you can take advantage of regardless of which OCS series you happen to be using. Let's take a look at today's topic. Cscape 10 Graphics Editing. Now, also during the course of this series, I've talked to you about some of my favorite summer activities. We've talked about bike touring, we've talked about train travel. This week, I'm going to talk just a little bit about summer vacations. Now, I have a family of 4 with 2 grown daughters and a lovely wife, and over the years, we've had a lot of great summer vacations. Of course, we've been to Disney World in Florida, we've made several trips to Kings Island in Ohio, which isn't too far from Indianapolis, but we probably spent the most time on the west coast of Michigan, near Lake Michigan. Now, in the southern part of Lake Michigan is a small town called Bridgman. That's where my grandparents were from. We would spend a lot of time at Weco Beach there. And then when my parents retired to the northern part of Michigan, on Beaver Island, we spent a lot of summers there as well. Michigan is a great state and a great place to enjoy the summer in. Now, today, even though my kids are grown and our schedules are tough to align, we're spending a whole week in Vermont at this home here, which we've rented from Airbnb. It's in Burlington, near Lake Champlain. And I can say that the older I get, the more I appreciate the time with my family. All right, enough about my vacations. Don't worry, we don't have any kind of home videos or film strips or anything like that coming later in the show. We're going to get right into the technical content. Let's break it down. So today, we're covering those new graphics editing features in Cscape 10 that apply to any OCS model, not just Canvas. There are plenty of other Canvas exclusive features that we'll be covering in the upcoming weeks, but today, the features you see are available for any OCS model. We'll cover creating and naming screens, editing screens in tabs, which is probably the biggest difference fundamentally between previous versions of Cscape and the current Cscape, at least as it relates to graphics editing. We'll talk about the graphics toolbar and how it's changed. Also, there's a new graphics toolbox. We'll talk about the tools that are available for selecting objects and aligning objects. And then we'll talk about clip art. What is clip art? How is it different than symbols? And are symbols still available in the symbol library version of Cscape 10? We'll find out. All right, let's get started. Now, to be clear, when I say that these graphics features can be used with any OCS, these are the models I'm talking about. We're talking about the XLE and the XLT, the Micro OCS, the XL series, the XL Prime series, and Canvas. You could even use these features with non-screen models like an RCC if you use WebMI in the project. Let's spend a few minutes looking at the graphics editing features in Cscape 10. All right, as we start, let's create a new program. I'll press the quick menu button and select New. Now, it makes no difference what type of logic you prefer or type of logic you select for any given controller project. I'm going to select Variable Base Advanced Ladder, but it has no impact whatsoever on graphics editing. Okay, so I've got a new project created, completely empty. Let's actually start, before we dive into the graphics editing, let's actually start by taking a look at which OCS series are supported by Cscape 10. All right, so I'm going to press, I'm going to go to Hardware Configuration, okay? And since I'm not online with a controller, it has selected the default controller, which happens to be an XL4 from the XL series. Now, that happens to be one of our most popular controllers ever over the years, so that's probably why that one was selected. But let's take a look at which series are supported by Cscape 10. Now you'll notice the list is quite a bit smaller than Cscape 9, and that's because a lot of obsolete series, many of which who have been obsolete for years, have been eliminated from the list. So we primarily have the Micro OCS, the XL series, the XL Prime series, and the upcoming Canvas series. Now we also have RCC, the controllers that don't have a display. We also have Web Designer, which is for those WebMI type projects, all right, that aren't necessarily controller centric. And then we also have the upcoming and not yet available OCS-IO CPU series. Okay, so Cscape 10 is ready for those when they'll be available later in the year. But for my demonstrations, I'm going to select an XL Prime, and I'm going to select an XLW. There we go, an XLW Prime, which has a little more screen real estate for our demonstrations. All right, so there we go. Now that we have a controller selected, let's start editing screens. Now, first, you'll notice that by default, just like in Cscape 9, we have a logic section created called main. Now let's go ahead and create a graphics screen. So how do we do that? Well, we need to do that from the Project Navigator. And if your Project Navigator isn't displayed in your desktop, then go back and check out one of our videos for the user interface and get your user interface set up the way you want so you have access to the Project Navigator. But here in the Project Navigator, we're going to look for user interface, and then we're going to expand that section. Okay, and then we will find an option or an entry here called main screen. We highlight that, right click, and select new screen. So that's how we create a new screen. Now, whenever we create a new screen, it automatically gives it a name, a default name of the screen number. So screen 1 is the default for the first screen. Now, I would encourage you to rename it to something that makes some sense. Okay, and don't worry, you're not going to lose the screen number in case you want to use that feature to call the screen in Logic later. I'm going to call this main menu. Okay, I'm just going to call it that. And you'll notice as soon as I name it, it automatically puts the screen number in parentheses after the screen name because the screen number is still important. The other thing you'll notice is that it automatically created a tab right alongside my Logic tab. Okay, it automatically created a tab with the name of the screen along with the screen number. So, as you can see, the other big change, or probably the biggest change in terms of how graphics are edited in Cscape 10, is the fact that they're edited in tabs alongside of the tabs that you would use for Logic editing. So that's very convenient because you can switch back and forth. So I can switch to the Logic tab and other tabs that might be open at the time, and then back to screen tabs. Okay, and you can have multiple screen tabs open simultaneously. This just happens to be the first screen tab that we have open, that we've created actually. Okay, so screen editing in tabs is a big difference. All right, now that we have our screen editing environment displayed here, let's take a look and see what we've got. So on the left here, we have a toolbar that is new, a screen editing toolbar with a variety of different options available here. Let's take a look at some of those. Okay, so let's start in the middle. If we want to adjust the zoom on our screen here, we can do that using the zoom in and zoom out controls. All right, if we want to change the background color, we can do that by pressing a button here to set our background. So if we want to set our background to, let's say, white or a different color, we can do that here. Now, this is standard graphics that is supported by the controller that I'm editing right now, which happens to be an XLW Prime. So my choices for the background are going to be a color or a gradient. Now with Canvas, which we'll review in future weeks, with Canvas, you have more choices in terms of what your background consists of. You can select images and those sorts of things, but this is standard graphics, so I'm just going to support a solid color, and in this case, that's going to be white. Okay, let's look at some other options. For snap to grid, we can adjust the large grid and the small grid, toggle those on and off for snapping to the grid. Now, when we have multiple screens, there are a variety of ways we can access multiple screens. Of course, they're all going to be edited in tabs, but we have the ability to go from screen to screen if we have multiple screens created using this previous screen and next screen button. That's one of the ways we can navigate from screen to screen. Okay, coming back up to the top here. All right, we have cut, copy, and paste controls. We have move to the front, move to the back. All right, we have insert comment, which it's always good to document your project, and comments are good even when you're doing screen editing. And then you've also got error check, so you can check your screens for errors with a button here if you choose. All right, and what else do we have here? We've also got an undo and a redo, and then finally we have the operator simulator. So if you want to see what a button is going to look like down and up, not just in its default position, you can use the operator simulator here to simulate that, which is a similar feature to what has been available with previous versions of Cscape. Okay, so that is the editing toolbar over here on the left. There's also a variety of features that you can access by right-clicking, so let's do that now. Okay, so I'm going to go to the screen area. Can't right-click outside of the screen area, but if I right-click in the screen area, okay, you can see available commands like setting your grid. Okay, so if you want to adjust your grid, not only the snap, but also the dimensions of your grid, you can do that here. I'll right-click again here, and then you can see you can do a variety of other functions as well. Again, you can adjust your zoom, you can go to a particular screen, you can set this screen as your default or your initial screen. Now, by default, screen 1 is the initial screen, so I don't need to do that here if that's okay. All right, you can work with screen groups. All right, so you can assign this screen to a particular group of screens to categorize your screens, if you will. And there's just a variety of other things that you can access from here in regards to a screen group. You may have created a screen group in the past that has a set of objects that look just the way you want. You can import those here if you choose. And then if you want to insert a symbol graphic on your screen as an image, for instance, and you've got the symbol library version of Cscape, and yes, the symbol library is supported in Cscape 10, then you could select that. So that is the options that are available when you right-click. Now let's take a look at the right side of our environment, and we'll see a new feature for Cscape 10, and that is a graphics-related project toolbox. Now the project toolbox has been around for many years, but it was strictly a logic editing tool before. Now it is context sensitive. So when I am in a screen tab, I've got graphics options here. When I switch to a logic tab, I have logic options. So again, it's now context sensitive. So let's go back to screen editing and take a look at my different options here, or my different categories here in the graphics editing project toolbox. Okay, let's start with fixed objects. Okay, so again, these are not new objects, new graphics objects. They're just the same graphics objects we've supported in the past with these standard graphics available in a new feature. Okay, now of course with Canvas we're going to have some new choices, but with our standard controllers with standard graphics, these are the same options for the most part we've had in the past, but available to be selected with a different tool. All right, let's start with text label. Again, pretty simple stuff here. All right, the same text tool that you would be used to with previous versions of Cscape. Okay, of course, you can control the text, you can control the orientation, you have the same options in terms of your fonts that are available, you've got colors available. Again, this is all very simple or very standard stuff with the standard OCS graphics. Okay, also available is the ability to import images. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. All right, just size it to the initial size I'm looking for. This has been reworked a little bit, but very similar. I'll select my number of colors. All right, typically I like to set a max number of colors by default. All right, I'm going to say retain original size, and then go ahead and select my image. Now you'll notice that select symbol is available. The symbol library is supported in Cscape 10 if you have the symbol library version. All right, let's go ahead and select an image now. All right, I'm going to select this JPEG here. All right, we can choose if we want to treat the background as transparent or not. Okay, do we want the image scaled to fit or not? I'm going to leave it at its original size. All right, and there we go. So again, it's been reworked somewhat, but it should be the same graphics tools that you're used to, just available instead of being kind of up here at the top. They're available organized in this toolbox. And here we have our shapes, that sort of thing. So that's the fixed object section of the project toolbox. Next, we have live text data. Okay, so these are the numeric data fields. Of course, that's the very common one we're used to. Let's go ahead and put one of those on the screen right now. All right, and you can see looks very similar to what you've seen in the past. So it's not going to be a difficult learning curve, a transition to Cscape 10 when it comes to graphics editing. So again, these are the same options that you would have seen with Cscape 9 and earlier versions. Now, of course, I just hit OK without any kind of a variable, so it's not going to like that. I'll just cancel and delete that. Okay, I right-click to delete in this case. All right, and in addition to the numeric data field, we've got the text table, ASCII, timer, time and date data, password data, that sort of thing. Okay, all right, so that is the live text data area there. For live graphics data, we've got our indicator lamp, we've got our bar graph meter. So these are all objects that aren't necessarily input objects, right? They aren't objects that have an action. They're just objects that are going to be displaying data in a read-only fashion. And again, these are all the ones that aren't grayed out, at least, are all existing objects from Cscape 9 and earlier. So that's live graphics data. Touch objects, these would include objects that have an action when they're touched, like a switch or a button, a selector, a slider, screen jump, menu, notepad, removable media manager, recipe editor function. So again, all these are existing functions. Let's go ahead and put a button on the screen. All right, so we can take a look at that dialog. All right, we've got a standard button here. Let's select a round one. All right. Let's go to our indicator properties. We can change our on color and our off color. All right, so these are the standard graphics objects without any real significant change. All right, and for me to complete this, I'm going to need to assign a variable here or just hit the cancel button and go back to the default. So I think I'll do that here. I just wanted to give you a quick look at what the dialog looks like. All right, so let's go ahead and delete this. All right, so that is the touch objects section. And then this is a new section here called clip art. Now you notice that I imported a standard image, a custom image, I guess you could say, one that I wanted to insert. And of course, we still support the symbol library, but now we also support clip art. And clip art is included with all versions of Cscape 10, the symbol version and the non-symbol version. And really what you have here is a list of clip art images that there's hundreds here, okay? Now, they're not as extensive as the symbol library, so there's still a need for the symbol library if you have specific graphics you're looking for. But by default, at least, there are additional graphics available even in the standard version of Cscape that might be useful to users. Okay, so as an example, we have this barrel. Let's go ahead and select that and size it up here. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can see I did the click and then the click and drag to size it the way I want. Now, if you're not sure what the image looks like by default in terms of its proportions, the other thing I could do is I could click and drag. So I could click and drag it to the screen, and then it's going to be, in a miniature version of itself, if you will, and then I can resize it as I like. All right, so this is a couple different options I have for bringing one of these onto the screen. So lots of barrels, lots of tanks, for instance, gas cylinders and more tanks, duct work, okay, that's available in a variety of different configurations. We have plenty of things like pipes and valves. Okay, so let me grab one of these and put it on the screen. Okay, oops, let's do it properly here. Let's do it again. We have a couple different ways we can do it. Let's click and drag to get the default configuration on the screen, and then we can resize it from there. Okay, all right, so that is an example of a 180-degree connector for a pipe. And then we also have, silos and tanks. We have motors and pumps. Again, you should be able to find, in a lot of cases at least, you should be able to find the type of image that you're looking for to put into your project and complete the graphics that you are looking for. So again, symbol library is of course still available if you choose to select that. It does have thousands and thousands, I think 3,000 or 4,000 different symbols available. But I will say that the clip art library that's included as standard is also very extensive. The last thing I want to show you in terms of graphics editing are some new tools for selecting and aligning objects. Now, in Cscape 9 and earlier, you had a special lasso tool if you wanted to select multiple objects simultaneously. So let's clean up the desktop here, but instead of having to select a special lasso tool, we can just go ahead and click and drag our mouse, and automatically we can select multiple objects that fall inside of that. Okay, so I'm just going to clean these up by deleting them. So I will right click and hit delete. I have, of course, could hit the delete button on my keyboard, a variety of different things I could do. Okay, so let's say that I wanted to have a series of 5 barrels of this size all lined up across the middle of my screen. So how could I do that easily and ensure that they're all at the same alignment and distributed evenly? Okay, now of course I could use the grid to do that, but I'd probably have a fair amount of fiddling to make that happen. So let's go ahead and copy this barrel, and then I'm just going to use my keyboard to paste multiple barrels because I want a total of 5, and I'm not taking any care whatsoever to get them lined up the way I want. I'm just getting them here on the screen. All right, so I've got these 5 barrels, and I want to have these evenly distributed on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to position my first one over here. I'm going to say, okay, I want the first one to be about there, let's say, and the last one to be somewhere in here. Again, ultimately, they're all going to be lined up at the top and distributed over this distance. I'll move this one over just a little further. Okay, so what I can do now is I can select all these barrels and right click and say align objects, and in my case I want to align them to the top. So this is going to align them to the topmost object, which happens to be my one over on the left. So I'm going to hit align top. Okay, now they're all aligned at the top. I'm going to reselect them, and now I'm going to distribute them so they are evenly spaced from left to right. So I'll right click and hit align objects and distribute horizontally. Okay, and now I have my 5 barrels all lined up perfectly, all distributed perfectly with that new tool that's available in Cscape 10. And then of course I could very easily now move these as a group, okay, group them if I wish, position them as a group precisely where I want them, that sort of thing. Okay, so again, you've got some new tools there for selecting as well as aligning and distributing. All right, that's a look at the graphics editing tools available in Cscape 10 that are available for any controller, regardless of whether it uses the advanced graphics, like Canvas, or whether it uses standard graphics, like the rest of the OCS controller lines. Okay, that wraps up our technical content for today, but we're less than a week away from the launch of Cscape 10, and we've got another event for you this week. This Thursday at 2 o'clock, 2 days from today, we have the Cscape 10 launch webinar. Now, in order to be registered for that, you'll need to go to our website at www.hornerautomation.com. Don't miss it. It's going to be a popular event. And then next week, Monday, we post Cscape 10 available as a free download from our website. The following day, in our normal Tuesday 2 o'clock time slot, we've got a big Cscape 10 launch party and Q&A session. We'll be giving away prizes. We'll be answering questions on the air that you have about Cscape 10. If you're able to attend live, you'll be able to get us those questions through the chat. If you're not able to attend live, we'll be gathering up those questions and answering those on the air, and then you can watch them on replay. Okay, that's it for this week from sunny Vermont. Just because it's summer vacation doesn't mean the weather's going to cooperate. But that's okay. Let's all get out there and enjoy summer vacation with our family.